to never, ever, ever tell anyone
that I'm Captain Man's secret sidekick.
It is done.
Now we blow bubbles.
And fight crime.
Feels good.
Sometimes to realize if you live in a dream and you know what it means, and you can't let them change your mind.
If you wanna play, come and play today. Let's just get away. Yeah.
Let the bass get low. Drop that and make the whole club go. Drop that.
Where make it shine.
I think my whole childhood has been leading up to this. Let's talk about the impressive yet confusing mess of the Dan-Schneider Universe. Now, most of Nickelodeon's most popular shows were created and produced by Dan Schneider, and because of that, they all have common through lines with jokes and references, and are largely believed to take place in the same universe. Now, growing up, this was a really big deal to me because I spent my entire childhood watching Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and Disney Channel, and there have been many instances of those networks creating crossover episodes among their most popular shows, particularly with Disney Channel. Now, whenever Disney Channel did crossover episodes and specials, they were really big deals.
You're Hannah Montana! And you're wearing cake. Vanilla, my favorite.
The most popular ones were That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana and Wizards on Deck with Hannah Montana. Those crossovers established that those shows all took place in the same universe, which at the time was just mind-blowing, at least to me, because before it really did seem that these shows were all self-contained stories. So the idea that Miley, Alex, Raven, Zach, and Cody in fact did live in the same universe was just shocking to me. That being said, with the Disney Channel crossovers, they are all still treated as self-contained stories, so these episodes and specials are the only times we ever see these characters interact or mention each other.
Hannah! I haven't seen you since you sang at my birthday last year. Oh yeah, I had a blast. By the way, y'all still haven't paid me for that.
And the fact that these characters have met is never brought up again, and they all go back to their own universes and self-contained stories. But with the Nickelodeon shows, particularly those created by Dan Schneider, there were constant references to each of the other shows that really made them feel that they were in fact all taking place in the same universe. It never ended with just one big crossover episode. Like I said, Dan Schneider was the creator and producer of Nickelodeon's most popular shows, and because of that, the fans have dubbed his shows as the Dan-Schneider Universe. Now, in some ways, all of the Dan Schneider shows are believed to take place in the same universe, dating all the way back to the 90s with the show All That. However, it is commonly agreed upon in the fandom that the Dan Schneider Universe, as it has now become known, really started taking shape with Drake and Josh. Since then, all of the shows created have made very intentional efforts to canonize the idea that all of these shows are occurring in a shared universe. Now, just to give you a good outline of what we're going to be diving into, the Dan-Schneider Universe, as we'll be discussing in today's video, consists of Drake and Josh, Zoey 101, iCarly, Victorious, Sam and Cat, Henry Danger, and Game Shakers. Now, there was a spin-off of Henry Danger called Danger Force, but I'm not going to include it in this video because Schneider didn't have any direct involvement with that show, other than it being a spin-off of another show he created. Also, we're not going to be including anything from the iCarly reboot, because again, I also don't think it really fits into the Dan-Schneider universe because he has nothing to do with that reboot either. Now, the issue with this connected universe is that while there is substantive evidence to suggest that these shows are taking place in a shared universe, that idea is constantly muddled and contradicted throughout the universe. So today we're going to be examining the Dan-Schneider universe in all of its crazy contradictory mess. Now this video is going to be long. I was actually thinking of cutting it in 2 parts, but I couldn't think of a way to do that without one part feeling incomplete. So don't feel pressure to watch it all in one sitting, it's fine. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and thanks so much for watching. And you can also follow me on Twitter to connect. Now let's get into it.
Ready yet? Get set. It's All That.
So even though All That, Kanan and Kel, and The Amanda Show aren't officially a part of the Dan-Schneider universe, I still think it's important to have some background knowledge on them because a lot of jokes, references, and actors from these shows appear later within the shows officially a part of the universe. So let's take a look at some of these unofficial shows. All That. So All That was a sketch comedy show that ran from 1994 to 2005. Pretty much Saturday Night Live, but for kids.
And
some peas. I said peas.
And I said,
There were some really popular sketches in the show, and some actors that would go on to appear in other shows. We had Amanda Bynes, who did a sketch called Axe Ashley. She would go on to star in The Amanda Show. We had Kenan Thompson, who appeared in a lot of sketches. Ironically enough, he would go on to actually be a main cast member of SNL. There was Kel Mitchell, who had a really popular sketch called Good Burger.
Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. Can I take your order?
That was actually so popular that it went on to become a movie, and in fact, Paramount Plus is making a sequel to that movie for some reason. And even Jamie Lynn Spears was on All That.
Jamie Spears loves to chew raw meat.
And of course, she went on to star in Zoey 101. Now, I've never watched All That. I wasn't alive in the 90s, and it was a little before my time of really getting into TV. But in watching some episodes for this video, I gotta say, it's actually really good. I can see why it was so popular. It was also really striking to me how diverse the cast was. There were so many people of color and women, and I really liked that. Suffice to say, the show was extremely popular, and it was even briefly rebooted in 2019, with a lot of the former cast members returning. Unfortunately, in 2020, production was shut down due to COVID-19, and it never really picked up again. However, two breakout stars, Kenan and Kel, would go on to get their own show called Kenan and Kel. Kenan and Kel served as a spin-off from the show All That. It was a sitcom following Kenan and Kel as they go on misadventures, normally stemming from Kenan coming up with a plan that goes wrong because of Kel's ineptitude.
Amy. What is this?
It's about Amy.
You think?
It ran from 1996 to 2000, and it was a pretty funny show. It really capitalized on the comedic dynamic between Kenan and Kel. They really played off each other really well, and to this day, it's always a big deal when they work together just because of how iconic their dynamic was from this show. Next is The Amanda Show. The Amanda Show was another spin-off of All That, starring Amanda Bynes. The Amanda Show was a pretty interesting concept because, like All That, it was a sketch comedy show, but it was also a show within a show. Like, the actors played a fictionalized versions of themselves while also appearing in the sketches for The Amanda Show. It was like so random in Sunny with a Chance before that was a thing. The show ran from 1992 to 2002, and The Amanda Show was really the jumping off point for the Dan-Schneider Universe, because this was our first introduction into Drake Bell and Josh Peck. In fact, one of the sketches that they did together was the inspiration for Drake and Josh. In the sketch, Drake and Josh are fighting over shrimp, and it's said that producers were so impressed with their chemistry that when the Amanda Show ended, they decided to create a show around them. Even the mom in Drake and Josh, played by Nancy Sullivan, appeared in sketches on The Amanda Show. I also liked that in Drake and Josh, they referenced the shrimp sketch in the series finale.
To enjoy conversation!
Really paying homage to how the show even came together when it was finally time to wrap up the series, which I thought was really cool. So now that we've looked into some of the shows predating the shared universe, we can finally jump into the Dan-Schneider Universe and look at how all these shows are connected. And the first show we'll start with is Drake and Josh. Drake and Josh. So Drake and Josh was a really popular show. Like, really popular. Like, 2 movies popular. The series follows a blended family. Drake Parker and Josh Nichols have recently become stepbrothers after their parents get married. They go on a lot of adventures together. Normally, the source of conflicts for episodes derive from the fact that they're so different from each other. Josh is really responsible, serious, but also a bit socially awkward, whereas Drake is extremely rebellious, irresponsible, and really popular. Something that I thought was really interesting when revisiting the show was how Drake's character evolved over time. So Drake is considered to be the dumb one among the brothers. But what's interesting is that in the first season, his character wasn't dumb at all. Drake was always rash and irresponsible. He didn't take school seriously, but he wasn't stupid. But after the first season, there's a noticeable shift where his character just gets dumber and dumber, to the point where he can barely read.
This year they're only available in South America. What? South America!
Drake is also a notorious womanizer, while Josh struggles a lot to get girls. But as the show goes on, they help better each other. Josh comes out of his shell a little bit more, and Drake learns to be a little bit more considerate of other people. So now let's talk about some of the characters of interest. Megan. So first is Megan Parker, Drake and Josh's younger sister. Megan started off as just a lovable prankster. She would pull a lot of practical jokes against her brothers, but as the show went on, the kind of pranks Megan would pull on Drake and Josh became more and more elaborate. I mean, she has like military-grade spyware and a whole setup in her room with a hidden TV screen and everything. Like, just an insane amount of access to technology to really mess with her brothers. And I have to wonder how she's able to afford all of that. Anyways, next we have Helen Dubois. She works as the manager of the Premiere Movie Theater. Josh eventually starts working at the movie theater, but Helen is very dismissive, rude, and often forgetful of Josh. But she is completely infatuated with Drake.
How do you afford all this?
Is that some of your business?
How do you afford it?
Well, I'll tell you, Drake.
Always giving him special treatment and at times being kind of flirtatious with him. It's part of Josh's goal to earn Helen's respect and become assistant manager, which would also come with a cool gold vest. And he is eventually able to do that by the end of the show at Helen's wedding. Another thing you should know about Helen is that she was a child actress. She appeared as a kid on the hit TV show Happy Times and even had a catchphrase.
That is not my job. Yeah, that was my catchphrase. That is not my job. You don't do it right.
Crazy Steve. Next we have Crazy Steve, played by Jerry Traynor. Crazy Steve is an employee at the Premiere Movie Theater. He is loud, paranoid, and prone to fits of rage.
Doodle-doo, the cow says boo! Doodle-doo, the cow says boo!
He can only be calmed down by saying she'll be coming round the mountain. We also have Gavin Mitchell, who is also an employee at the Premiere Movie Theater. He's very aloof and doesn't like working. Interesting facts about Gavin is that he's played by Jake Farrow, who writes and produces a lot of Dan-Schneider episodes for multiple shows, and is also the voice actor for Rex from Victorious. And lastly, we have Craig and Eric. Craig and Eric are friends of Josh, and they play into very stereotypical nerd tropes. They are oftentimes seen together and are oftentimes confused for one another, but they are pretty funny as a duo. Next is Zoey 101. Zoey 101 was another popular show from the Dan-Schneider Universe. It follows Zoey Brooks as she transfers to Pacific Coast Academy, a boarding school that was once an all-boys boarding school, but has since started accepting girls. Zoey 101 was a show designed around ships. From the pilot episode, it set up a romance between Zoey and Chase, and all the characters are just waiting for these two crazy kids to finally get together and start dating. Now, Zoey 101 had a lot of problems and drama behind the scenes that affected how the show developed. For example, in season 1, there was a character called Dana, who was roommates with Zoey and Nicole, but she was always pretty mean to them, especially Nicole. She was kicked off the show after season 1 because apparently she was very similar to her character and was actually a bully on set. Nicole was also written off the show after season 2 because Alexa Nicola left the show after she was being mistreated by production and cast members. There was as much drama off screen as there was on screen. They also made a Zoey 101 reboot movie this year, Zoey 102. It's not great. Now, I never really had any interest in rewatching Zoey 101. It's an okay show, but I'm glad I did because I did find one interesting fact. In this season 1 episode, there's a song being played in the background that might sound familiar.
Very cool.
Well, then let's go. I hate to miss the beginning of a movie. I get the aisle seat.
No, I get the aisle seat.
You always get the aisle
No, I don't. You do.
You do.
No, you do.
You know, I think they're happiest when they're arguing.
There is no upper hand, I'm giving you mine.
So that song has appeared multiple times in Victorious. It's called Okay by Backhouse Mike. And interestingly enough, Backhouse Mike also did the opening song for Sam and Cat. So really a full circle moment. Now Zoey 101 actually doesn't overlap a lot with the other shows in the universe, so we're not going to be going over all the characters, just some of the ones that are noteworthy. So first off is Lola Martinez. She first appeared in season 2 as a replacement for Dana. She becomes Zoey and Nicole's new roommate. She's an aspiring actress, and after Nicole was written off the show, she kind of filled in the role of being the best friend of Zoey. Quinn Pensky. Quinn is a super weird genius that at first was kind of the odd one out of the group just because of how weird she was. But after some time, she became closer with everyone and started secretly dating Logan. Quinn is a super talented inventor, and she makes a lot of these weird crazy gadgets throughout the show. And she's originally from Seattle. That's gonna come back later. Next we have Stacey Dilson, another weird girl. She has this obsession with cotton swabs, and she also has a lisp. She's very unpopular and practically no one makes any real effort to befriend her. She's kind of like Latrina Vega of Zoey 101.
Wait, now we got
Coco Wexler. Coco Wexler is the girl's dorm advisor. She has an unhealthy obsession with Chef Boyardee and is a bit of a mess when it comes to pretty much anything. She has a really tragic life and throughout the show really struggles to find anyone to date. James Garrett. So James James was a love interest of Zoey introduced in the final season of Zoey 101. He's played by Austin Butler, and man, Austin Butler has been around the kids programming scene. They eventually broke up and Zoey ended up with Chase. Finally. iCarly. iCarly was undoubtedly the most popular show to ever come out of Nickelodeon. It follows Carly Shay and her best friends Sam and Freddie as they skyrocket to internet fame when they start doing a web show, iCarly. Miranda Cosgrove starts in iCarly after playing Megan in Drake and Josh. Now, iCarly kind of stands out in a way because it not only is the most popular show in the universe, but most of the hard, defined details of the Dan-Schneider Universe being a thing really stems from this show. iCarly, in a lot of ways, is the nexus of the Dan-Schneider Universe. The show ran from 2007 to 2012, and it was renewed in 2021, but like I said, we're not going to be talking about the revival for the purposes of this video. Noteworthy characters include Sam Puckett. Sam is Carly's best friend, and she's prone to anger, really aggressive, and has a buttersuck that she sometimes used to beat people up. She has a really complicated home life and an abusive mother, and along with Carly, she's constantly shipped with her male co-star Freddie Benson. Freddie is the technical producer behind the show. He works the camera and presumably does everything to make iCarly happen. Like, he manages the website, he records the web show, does all of the special effects and the sound effects. Like, Freddie is iCarly. He's had a crush on Carly since forever, and they did date very briefly, but he's also dated Sam, and the possibility of Freddie dating either of these girls is a huge focal point of the show. Next we have Spencer, Carly's older brother. Spencer is an eccentric artist who creates sculptures for a living, which is weird because as the show went on, there was less focus on the fact that Spencer was an artist, and artists already don't make that much money. So the idea is that their father is really the one paying all the bills there, even though we hardly see him. Gibby. Gibby is the eccentric sidekick to the trio. He's really fun. Some of the best moments from the show come from Gibby. He had this thing where he would constantly take off his shirt, but he stopped doing that as he got older. And in the later seasons, he had a 3D model made of his head. Trust me, that will be important later. There's also Neville, who runs a competing website to iCarly, Nevillosity. Actually, not really a competing website because Nevillosity is a review website, but he's held a grudge against iCarly since forever, after Carly turned him down when he tried to kiss her. A lot of his animosity towards iCarly simultaneously stems from the fact that he wants to be with Carly and destroy her web show. He does appear in the reboot of the show, and I'm sad to announce, no, they did not make him gay in that version. The last noteworthy character is Nora. Nora is an iCarly superfan that has trapped the entire iCarly crew in her house twice. Like, she did it twice. She's really important because she's one of the few iCarly villains that we see after the show has ended. Okay. Lastly, I just want to shout out Tebow. He became a regular cast member towards the end of the show. He's not really a central character for this video because he doesn't cross over, but I just wanted to mention him here because he's really fun. Some of my favorite moments are from Tebow. Next we have Victorious. So, Victorious was the sister series to iCarly. It really tried to capture the success Disney was having with their musical shows. Around this time, Nickelodeon was greenlighting a lot of musical performance-based sitcoms. There was Big Time Rush, that actually became really popular, How to Rock, which was not popular, and Victorious. Victorious followed Tori Vega as she started attending a new performing arts high school. Victorious was really popular, not quite as popular as iCarly, but really up there. There's actually a lot of characters in the Victorious cast, so let's go through this quickly. There's Jade, she's the resident mean girl and antagonist to Tori, at least in the beginning, not so much by the end. Beck, he's Jade's boyfriend and he's really handsome. That's it. There's Kat, she's kind of weird, and as the series progresses, becomes more and more infantilized in a way that's kind of concerning. Andre, he's a super talented musician and best friends with Tori. There's also Robbie, he's kind of the weird one out of the group and everyone makes fun of him. He's awkward and best friends with a puppet, Rex. We also have Trina, Tori's older sister, who's really self-centered and considers herself to be super talented, even though others don't, and is mistreated by everyone, including her parents. We also have Psychowitz, who is the gang's eccentric theater teacher. And then there's Sinjin, just this weird guy that the gang also mistreats. Now, for the purposes of this video, the entire cast of Victorious is actually important, so we're gonna just be including all of them. Now, I did make a video about Victorious and why I feel we owe Tori Vega and Victoria Justice an apology, but there were some things from that video that I want to address here. So in that video, I said that the music from Victorious sucked. And people were really mad about that. The thing is, I do like songs from Victorious, but I do think that most of the songs are forgettable. Like, when people say what their favorite songs from Victorious are, it's almost always the same 5 songs. Mostly Take a Hint and Give It Up. but Victorious has over 20 tracks, and a lot of them are just okay. Like, they're not all radio hits. So anyways, this is my ranking of the Victorious tracks, and I stand by my statement that most Victorious songs are just okay at best. Now, there is one other thing I want to address. In the video, I jokingly refer to Charles Shawnee's character as Mr. Sheffield. For those of you who don't know, Mr. Sheffield is a character from the 90s sitcom The Nanny, starring Fran Drescher. I watched the show as a kid and I really liked it, so I jokingly called him Mr. Sheffield as a reference to the show. But a lot of people thought that his character was actually Mr. Sheffield and that I was confirming that Victorious and The Nanny takes place in the same universe. I was just joking. His character in Victorious is called Mason Thornsmith. I'm sorry for spreading misinformation. Victorious and The Nanny do not take place in the same universe. Although, okay, so there is kind of a theory that Victorious and The Nanny actually takes place in the same universe. Another character from the 90s sitcom actually guest starred on Victorious as Robbie's overbearing grandmother, played by Renee Taylor. Renee also starred in The Nanny as Fran's mother, so some fans have speculated that Robbie's grandmother is also Fran's mom. It doesn't help that both their names are Sylvia, and they both have the same personality, primarily being frustrated about their lazy husbands. Which, ironically, in Victorious, her husband's name is Maury, and in The Nanny, it's Morty.
Morty! Ma, Daddy can't hear you. He's watching the game.
Maury, turn up the heat!
No!
I think this was just a very intentional nod by the writers when they got her to guest star, just to pay homage to the 90s sitcom. Fran did have kids at the end of the show, but it isn't possible that one of them would be Robbie because Robbie would be older than them. But it's still a cool theory. Sam and Cat. Now, the next show is Sam and Cat. Sam and Cat served as a sequel for both iCarly and Victorious. Sam from iCarly moves to LA after the iCarly web show ended, and she moves in with Kat from Victorious, and they start a babysitting service together. For some reason. Them being babysitters actually kind of came out of nowhere, and it's a plot detail that becomes less and less relevant as the show goes on. They kind of just go on wacky adventures together and get into all kinds of mischief, and occasionally that will include kids that they babysit. This show's existence alone actually serves as further proof that the Dan-Schneider Universe is a thing, well, at least that the iCarly and Victorious universes are connected. So, in the main cast, we have some other important characters. Dice. He's a kid that's friends with Kat. He's kind of like a kid con artist, a jack of all trades. He's the guy they go to when they need things. He's also a bit of a gambler. Oh, and he manages the career of an MMA fighter, Goomer. Goomer is the MMA fighter that Dice manages. He seems to be a bit mentally stunted, like he acts like an 8-year-old. Actually, he acts like more of a 6-year-old. I prefer to put it that way than to just say that he's dumb, because while he's a grown man, it's more than just that he's dim-witted. He literally acts like a child, and oftentimes, Dice isn't only managing his career, but is also taking care of him. He's definitely my favorite character in the show though. He's really sweet and really funny. Next up is Henry Danger. So Henry Danger is a pretty weird show. It's a show about this kid, Henry, living in Swellview, who comes into contact with Captain Man, a superhero, and ends up working with him as his sidekick. They go on a lot of adventures together, defeating supervillains and saving the city of Swellview. Now, Henry Danger being a part of this universe just opens up so many questions, because the revelation of superheroes and supervillains existing in this universe is never addressed in any of the other shows, besides the ones where Henry Danger has a direct crossover episode in. So either Henry Danger has its own self-contained universe, or there are supervillains and superheroes in iCarly, Drake and Josh, and all the other shows. I kind of like the idea that superheroes exist in all these shows and they just never address it or talk about it at all. Henry Danger also stands out among all the other shows in this universe because it's the only action show. But the thing about the action in Henry Danger is that it's never really compelling. We never really get the sense that any of these characters are in any real danger, and the stakes are always incredibly low. Like, the villains aren't intimidating in the least, so the action sequences honestly aren't even that fun to watch because the main character's superpower is that he's literally indestructible. He'll be fine regardless of what's happening. And the thing is, there have been many action sequences in other shows, particularly iCarly, and those are so much more engaging and exciting because there is this real sense of dread that these characters might get hurt. Like, I was on the edge of my seat when Carly was dangling from the building because those are high stakes, but it just doesn't feel the same with Henry Danger. So anyways, the main characters in the show are Henry Hart. He becomes Captain Man's new sidekick, Kid Danger. Then there's Ray. He's Captain Man. His father did an experiment on him when he was younger, and now he's indestructible. There's Charlotte, Henry's best friend. She's really smart and figures out that Henry is Kid Danger and starts working for Captain Man and acts as kind of a sidekick to Henry. They also have a little bit of a flirtatious relationship. Then there's Jasper, Henry's other best friend. He's a huge Captain Man fan and eventually he also finds out that Henry is Kid Danger. There's also Gooch, but he left the show after season 1, and then we got Schwoz, who invents the gadgets that Captain Man and Kid Danger uses. Also, we have Piper, Henry's younger sister, who's also a huge Captain Man fan and the president of his fan club. Game Shakers. So the last show in the Dan-Schneider Universe is Game Shakers, and I hate it. Game Shakers is a show about two best friends, Kenzie and Babe, who start a new company making gaming apps. They get a sponsor from a famous rapper, Double G, played by Kel Mitchell, to continue making apps. So they start a company together called Game Shakers, with Double G acting as their partner. It's not an unwatchable show, but Game Shakers to me kind of encapsulates how the Dan-Schneider Universe devolved and just worsened in quality as time went on. Like, Game Shakers really does feel like the final season of iCarly and Victorious combined. The jokes aren't as funny, the writing isn't really great, and all of that combined with the fact that Game Shakers aired right when streaming services were taking off really played into its downfall. Also, Game Shakers really annoys me because it more than any other show undoes the work of establishing that these shows are connected, but we'll get to that later. Game Shakers was a show created to capitalize on the popularity of gaming apps in the mid-2010s. This was a time where gaming apps were at their peak popularity and had really entered the cultural zeitgeist. There were really popular apps such as Temple Run, Fruit Ninja, Angry Bird, Flappy Bird, and so it actually makes perfect sense that Nickelodeon would want to create a show around that trend, because the interesting thing about Game Shakers was that the apps they were making for the show were actual apps you could download and play on your smartphones, in the same way that the iCarly website was a real website you could visit at home. I really do think they were hoping one of the apps made for the show would break out and be as popular as maybe Angry Birds or Temple Run, and that the popularity of those gaming apps would funnel new viewers to the show. But that never happened. None of the gaming apps created for the show ever took off, and it's probably because they were all just rehashed versions of apps that were already popular. So Game Shakers stars Babe and Kenzie, their best friends, and run the business together. Actually, Kenzie is the tech genius behind the apps. Babes just comes up with the ideas, but Kenzie does all the work making the apps a thing. Babe is really boy crazy and gets more boy crazy as the series goes on. Double G is a really famous rapper and he's also the Game Shakers business partner. He gives them the capital to get their business started. There's Triple G, Double G's son. He befriends the Game Shakers and also tests out their game. And then there's Hudson. He's just the dumb friend. I don't really know what his deal is. His friendship with the rest of the group doesn't really make sense to me. He's just a comedic relief character that's not really good at being a comedic relief. So that's it. Those are all the shows that make up the Dan-Schneider Universe. Now, among all these shows, there are references and aspects of the worlds that pulls them together as a shared universe. Things that signal to us, the viewers, that these shows are taking place in the same space. There are larger aspects of this universe that appear in almost all of these shows, so really, even without direct and overt references to these shows sharing a universe, there are still things that we can point to let us know that these shows are all operating on the same plane. So we're going to go through all of them, starting first with the reuse of different actors. So a popular recurring detail we'll notice in a lot of these shows is the reuse of actors. These actors would have appeared in other Dan-Schneider shows but are playing a completely different character in other shows. This happens a lot. In fact, a lot of the main characters we see in Dan-Schneider shows were originally played by supporting actors in his previous shows. Drake and Joss originally guest starred on The Amanda Show. Jamie Lynn was a cast member on All That, Miranda Cosgrove starred on Drake and Josh before doing iCarly, and Victoria Justice was a main cast member on Zoey 101 before starring in Victorious. Now, it's important to note that these actors are playing completely different characters unless otherwise indicated. Also, this happens a lot across the universe, so much so that it would take too much time to account for every time a guest star appeared in multiple shows as a different character. So I thought I would just highlight some of the more notable appearances. Paige at PCA. So Miranda Cosgrove made a guest appearance on Zoey 101 as Paige Howard in the episode Paige at PCA. In this episode, Paige is a potential new transfer student at PCA and is also a super genius. After arriving at PCA, Quinn feels threatened by her presence because she seems to be a bit better at science than her. Eventually though, they were able to work together to save PCA when Paige's device almost blows the entire school up. At the end, Paige and Quinn got an early acceptance to college, Paige took it and we never saw her again, but Quinn decided to stay at school to be closer with her friends. Austin Butler. So before he was an Oscar-nominated actor, Austin Butler made several guest appearances on kids programming in the 2000s. In the final season of Zoey 101, he played James Garrett, Zoey's primary love interest in the season, kind of like a replacement for Chase, who appeared in guest appearances throughout the season. In the end though, Zoey ends up with Chase. Austin also appeared in iCarly in the episode I Like Jake, where he played Carly's love interest. In the episode, Carly has a huge crush on Jake, who's recently become single. She invites him over and then invites him to perform on the web show to do a live performance. The performance would mean a lot to his one-legged grandmother, who's always wanted to hear him sing. It turns out though that Jake is a really bad singer.
So beautiful, I need the world to see.
So during the live performance, Freddie places autotune on Jake's voice and he gives a really good performance. In the end though, the performance was so good that it got Jake back with his girlfriend. So lose-lose for Carly. Drake Bell. Drake Bell made a small cameo appearance on iCarly in the episode I Blew. This continues a tradition of blooper-filled episodes in Dan-Schneider shows. In one blooper, Drake Bell appears as his character Drake Parker from Drake and Josh. He called Miranda Megan, not Carly, but this was just a blooper episode where the actors play a fictionalized version of themselves, so this wasn't actually Drake Parker being in iCarly. In these episodes, iCarly is treated as just a TV show. Drake Bell also guest starred as himself in Zoey 101 episode Spring Fling, where he puts on a concert at PCA. Josh Peck. Josh Peck also made a small cameo in Victorious. In the episode Walkstar, Jay gets Tori to agree to secure funding for her disturbing play. Mrs. Lee, the owner of Walkstar, agrees to fund Jade's play so long as her daughter plays the leading role. Mrs. Lee's daughter is really untalented though, and her increase to control and change over the play pushes the gang to distract Mrs. Lee on the day of opening night so Jay can put on the play the way she intended to impress her father, who's never supported her artistic endeavors. At the end of the play, Josh Peck walks up to the girls and congratulates them on the performance. It's unclear whether or not this was Josh Peck in character as Josh Nichols, or just playing himself or some other random character. Jerry Trainer. Jerry Trainer also made a cameo in Victorious twice. In his first appearance in Jade Dumps Beck, Trina is putting on a one-woman show at Hollywood Arts, Chicago.
Chicago!
In the audience, we can see that Jerry Trainer is in attendance, but it's not clear whether he's playing Spencer or another character. It's very unlikely it was Spencer though. In his second appearance, Spencer makes a cameo in the episode April Fool's Blank. This episode has a mostly non-linear plotline, with random sequences and references dispersed throughout the episode. In one sequence, Tori goes through a door that inexplicably leads her to the Shea household. She says hi to Spencer, who's tending to Gibby's head on the couch. She goes through the front door and ends up on a game show. So even though this cameo was explicitly as Spencer, the nonsensical nature of the entire episode makes it impossible to take any of the events as canon. Nathan Kress. Nathan Kress also made a cameo appearance on Victorious. In the episode Who Did to Trina, Tori is putting on a play and was blackmailed by her sister to make her the lead. During the play, we see Nathan Kress in the audience. Much like the other iCarly cameos, he has no lines, and it's never established whether or not he was playing Freddy or some other random character. Nathan Kress also stars as himself in the Game Shakers episode Game Shippers, where the Game Shakers gang tried to get their questions about iCarly answered. Nathan also directed that episode. Shelby Marks. Now, before we even got Victorious the show, Victoria Justice made a guest appearance on iCarly as Shelby Marks. In the episode I Fight Shelby Marks, Victoria plays a champion MMA fighter, Shelby Marks. During an iCarly web show, Carly pokes fun at the fact that she could beat Shelby in a fight, which was obviously satirical because of how soft Carly is known to be. But the next day, the web show is clipped and a video of Carly seemingly challenging Shelby Marks to a fight goes viral. Eventually, Shelby sees the video and visits the Shea household. After a lot of kicking and resisting from Carly, Shelby and Carly are able to talk. Shelby wants to do an exhibition match with Carly for charity because it would be good publicity for both of the stars. Shelby promises to go easy on Carly and basically fake the fight, so Carly agrees and the fight is on. After the fight was announced, everyone starts making Carly feel really nervous because apparently Shelby's previous opponent left their match without a jaw.
Okay, come with me.
And to make matters worse, Sam convinces Carly to smack talk Shelby to drum hype for the fight, and during a press conference, Carly does her best to smack talk, but when Sam gets involved, things got a little heated, culminating in Carly falling into Shelby's elderly grandmother. With all the smack talking and now hurting her grandmother, Shelby is resolved to fight Carly for real during their match. Carly, fearing for her safety, decides to back out of the fight, much to the disappointment of many of their fans. Under public pressure to not chicken out, Carly decides to talk things out with Shelby. She apologizes and explains the whole situation. Fight is back on and Shelby agrees to go easy on Carly. Lurking in the shadows though is Neville, who comes up with a plan to destroy Carly. He edits a video making it seem as if Carly's attack on Shelby's grandmother was premeditated. He shows this edited video to Shelby, who again decides to fight Carly for real. During the fight, Shelby attacks Carly, but Carly is able to outlast Shelby in the fight by grabbing onto her leg, which is clearly against the rules. After the fight, Shelby lets Carly know that Neville was the one who brought the information about her grandmother to her. The iCarly gang is able to get Neville to admit he tricked Shelby, and Carly, Sam, and Shelby beat the living hell out of Neville. You know, watching this episode, it dawned on me how murky Neville's motivation is as an antagonist. He hates Carly because he has a crush on her and she keeps shooting him down, and a lot of his revenge has centered around him ruining her web show for turning down his advances. But in this episode, this had nothing to do with iCarly the web show. He just wanted to get Carly seriously injured. But why? What did she ever do to him to deserve that? You know, say what you will about Neville, but he sure knows how to hold on to a grudge. Pawnee. Jeanette McCurdy also made a guest appearance on Victorious as Pawnee. In the episode Crazy Pawnee, Tori has been struggling to fall asleep because her sister keeps her up with all of her sneezing. At school, Tori meets a student, Pawnee, crying in the bathroom. Pawnee is an awkward teen and struggles to make friends, so Tori decides to help her by introducing her to her friends, and they head to Psychowitz's class, and that's when Pawnee reveals she's a shrugger.
I'm one of the quiet kids who sits in the back and just reacts to stuff. You're a shrugger?
A title designated to the background characters that have no lines in scenes with the main characters. When they go to Psychowitz's class, however, Pawnee disappears. The others struggle to believe Pawnee is even real, and Tori's increased irritability due to the lack of sleep paints her out to be a crazy person imagining someone who does not exist. Pawnee dresses up in disguises and tortures Tori, telling her to leave the school. She replaces her locker from Make It Shine to Make It Rot. She dresses up as a delivery food person and dumps food all over her, all without anyone witnessing it. Eventually, Tori confides in her mom, and she decides to call her dad's partner Gary to help Tori investigate Pawnee. Tori is able to lure Pawnee out, and she reveals that she's torturing Tori because when Tori got admitted into Hollywood Arts, they had to kick out another student, and the student was Pawnee. So she hates Tori for taking her place. Tori is able to get Gary and the other cops to arrest Pawnee, and the others and Mr. Psychowitz finally see that she's real. Psychowitz reveals that her real name is Fawn Leibowitz, and that she wasn't kicked out to make room for Tori, but rather because of how disturbing she was. Pawnee is taken away and a squad car takes Tori and Trina home. But in the end, it was revealed to be Pawnee in the driver's seat, so presumably she was able to get away. So another interesting thing about this episode is the revelation that Tori's mom is having an affair with her husband's partner, Gary. She's constantly texting him very flirtatiously, and they both talk about each other in a way that implies that they're dating.
Oh, text Gary, I like that guy. I know, he's handsome, right? Kinda.
It's such a weird detail for the writers to add. It never goes anywhere. We just know that Tori's mom is now fucking her dad's partner. You know, Tori's dad makes very few appearances in the show. He only appears in a total of 7 episodes, and his last appearance in the show was early on in season 3. So I think the writers just wanted to acknowledge that Tori's dad is hardly ever around by throwing in the affair subplot.
I'll text your mom. Let her know you're okay.
Good.
She's a special lady.
Thanks.
And my headcanon is that he's having an affair too. Like, this man probably has a whole other family, which is why we never see him. I think they're both aware of the affairs. After the breakdown in their marriage, they probably just decided to start dating other people and are only staying together for the sake of the kids. But it's still pretty messed up that Tori's mom would have an affair with his partner. Like, that's low. But in reality, Tori's dad is probably getting some play too. At least in my head. Now, like I said before, there's a lot of different cameos and guest appearances like these throughout the shows. It'll take too much time to go through all of them, especially with the reuse of guest stars. Leon Thomas III guest starred in iCarly before starring in Victorious. Jeanette McCurdy and Drake Bell both guest starred in Zoey 101. And there's a lot more of those kinds of appearances like that throughout the universe. Now, you'll probably notice that most of these guest appearances happen between iCarly and Victorious. Well, that's mostly because both shows were airing at the same time, but were also filmed on neighboring lots. Nathan Kress said in an interview interview that a lot of the small cameos weren't even planned. It was just that the cast hung out so much on set that if they were ever filming, they would just put them in a scene. Now let's talk about some of the other aspects of the shared universe. Pear Products. One of the more noticeable aspects of the shared universe is the use of Pear Products. The Pear Company is a spoof of the Apple Company, down to the logo being a pear instead of an apple. Now, I tried to figure out when exactly was the first appearance of Pear Products in the Dan-Schneider universe, but I couldn't really pin it down. But Pear Products have appeared in all of the shows in the Dan-Schneider universe, from Drake and Josh all the way up to Game Shakers. The idea of the Pear Company originated out of trying to avoid having to pay copyright for the use of Apple or Microsoft devices in the show, so it's a clever way of getting around that. That eventually was developed further as the universe continued to expand. So there's Pear Books, a parody of MacBooks, Pear Pads, a parody of iPads, and probably the most popular and most recognizable, Pear Phones, parody of the iPhone. Now, interestingly enough, before smartphones entered the market, other phones were seen in the shared universe, regular flip phones and sidekicks. In fact, in the first season of iCarly, Carly has a Motorola Razr. But when the iPhone hit the market, we started seeing many variations of Pear phones, and the earliest depictions of these phones mirrored the rectangular shape of the first editions of the iPhone, just with a pear logo instead of an apple. Eventually, Pear phones evolved and took on a pear shape and came in a multitude of different colors. This is probably the most popular and noticeable version of these phones, and we all at some point wanted to own one of these phones. They looked really cool, I have to be honest. But when you think about the practicality of a pear-shaped phone for longer than a minute, you realize how much of a bad idea a phone like this would be in actuality. First off, the Pear phones are really small. Like, really small. That's more of a personal preference thing because I like to have the biggest iPhone, but holding one of these phones doesn't look that ergonomic. Also, because it's shaped like a pear, to watch videos on it, the video screen has to be so much smaller to fit into the pear shape. I know we all wanted them and they looked really cool, but Pear phones just aren't that practical. They do get another upgrade in Henry Danger. These versions of the Pear phone are rectangular again, but are transparent, which is another stupid design. Imagine watching a video and everyone around you can see what you're watching. Yeah, no. So the Pear Company and the Pear Products as props is one of our more noticeable indicators that all of these shows takes place in the same universe. Outside of the Pear Company, there are also various shared media in the Dan-Schneider universe that appear across multiple shows. Two of the more notable ones are Girly Cow and Galaxy Wars. Girly Cow is a cartoon that has appeared in multiple different shows. It seems to be a parody of Cow and Chicken. There are multiple instances of the show being seen or referenced in iCarly, Zoey 101, and Drake and Josh. The other notable piece of media is Galaxy Wars, which is a parody of Star Wars. Galaxy Wars seems to have a deep lore similar to Star Wars. They have their own version of stormtroopers who wear red instead of white, and their own version of Yoda called Nug Nug. There was even an episode in iCarly where Spencer thought he got an actual prop from a Galaxy War movie, but it turned out to be just a replica. Now, I know I said there was only two notable pieces of media, but there is actually one other really important shared media in the universe, and that is iCarly. Not iCarly the TV show, but iCarly the web show. The webcast has appeared in other TV shows such as Zoey 101 and Victorious. We've seen multiple times characters actually sitting down and watching the web show as it airs, canonizing the idea that iCarly exists in those universes as well. Another common aspect of the Dan-Schneider universe is the dialogue. There are a lot of made-up words used in the different shows like chiz, which in the shows they say is the name of a German sausage, but really it's just another way of saying shit. But even outside of the many made-up words and lingo of the Dan-Schneider shows, there's something very unique about the dialogue. Like, Dan-Schneider shows have their own dialect. Just the way they string words together, the different sayings they use, it's kind of hard to explain, but you know you're watching a Dan-Schneider show just by the way the characters speak.
I'm untouchable. I control iCarly, and there's nary a thing you can do to stop me.
Nary? Oh, listen, good. It's Foonie. Hey, Foonie girl, I got some dingy feet for ya.
All right, you failed the pop quiz? Welcome to my club.
I don't want to be part of your F club.
Well.
Another recurring detail in Dan-Schneider shows is Gibby's head. In the episode I Still Psycho, Gibby has a 3D replica of his head constructed, and since then it has appeared multiple times throughout the Dan-Schneider universe. At one point the head was sold for thousands of dollars. It has appeared in Victorious, Sam and Cat, Henry Danger, and Game Shakers, often as a prop in the background. Now, the final aspect of the shared universe we'll be discussing is the appearance of characters in different shows. This is what the whole video and the universe is built upon. Whereas before we discussed actors appearing in different shows but playing different characters, in this section the same characters are either referenced or appear in different shows other than the ones they originated from. The appearances of these characters is the most solid indicator of the shows taking place in the same universe. So now let's look at some notable appearances of different characters appearing in different shows within the Dan-Schneider universe. I was a pageant girl. In this episode of iCarly, we find out that Sam used to compete in beauty pageants as a child, but was banned from ever competing again when she was accused of sabotaging and injuring another contestant. This contestant, Leanne, is on her way to win her 100th pageant in a row. Sam really doesn't want that to happen and convinces Carly to enter the pageant since she's still banned. Carly agrees and Sam trains Carly on how to win a beauty pageant. When they arrive at the pageant though, they find out that enough time has passed since Sam was banned and she's actually eligible to compete. Sam decides to enter the pageant herself and she performs this really amazing tap dance routine with her former dance captain, who you may recognize from another show. Now early in the pageant, when the contestants are introducing themselves, we hear slightly in the background Quinn Pensky making an introduction.
My name is Quinn Pensky.
Which makes sense because she is originally from Seattle and she has said in Zoey 101 that she used to compete in beauty pageants. It's unclear whether or not it's actually Quinn Pensky from Zoey 101 because we never actually see her, but there's a good chance that it was. In the end, Sam was able to successfully win the pageant. Helen's back. Helen Dubois from Drake and Josh makes a guest appearance in the victorious episode Helen's Back. In this episode, Hollywood Arts' current principal is resigning after getting married, and his replacement is none other than Helen. Helen maintains most of her personality from Drake and Josh, her brashness and no-nonsense attitude, and in the episode she actually makes reference to the fact that she used to be a manager of the Premiere Movie Theater in San Diego.
And most recently I was a senior manager at the Premiere Movie Theater in San Diego.
And also was a child actress on the show Happy Times. They even make a reference to her iconic catchphrase.
You were the little girl who always said, "That is not my job."
Yes, I was.
As the new principal, Helen announces that every student would have to re-audition to stay at Hollywood Arts. The entire gang does their re-audition, but Tori is the only one not to get accepted back into Hollywood Arts. We find out though that it was actually a mistake and Trina was actually the one not accepted. In order to get Trina back in, Tori comes up with a plan where she would set up a fake burglary scenario and Trina would protect Helen with her combat skills and she'd let her back in for saving her. And it worked, and Trina got back into Hollywood Arts, and that's the last time we ever saw of Helen in the series. I think there probably was some intention to have Helen appear more often after that episode, but it probably was difficult because she was working on other shows at the time. Even though that was her only appearance, it made a very clear connection that Drake and Josh and Victorious takes place in the same universe. I Start a Fan War. So, I Start a Fan War was a huge iCarly special that was actually not that great. Wow, looking back, I thought this was the pinnacle of TV at the time, but watching it again, yeah, they've definitely had better specials. Anyways, in this special, the iCarly gang are going to WebCon, an internet-themed conference. They were supposed to go the year before, but couldn't because they were kidnapped by Nora. Don't worry, we're gonna get into the psycho stuff later. Meanwhile at school, Carly has a crush on this kid who asked her out, though he hesitated because he went online and saw that a lot of iCarly fans thought Carly and Freddie were dating and gave them the ship name Creddy. Carly explains that some superfans really want her and Freddie to date, and that some fans even want Sam and Freddie to date, Sadie, but that she's single and still open to dating him. Unfortunately, she has WebCon that weekend, so they have to postpone their date. Spencer has also decided to attend WebCon to attend a costume contest based on his favorite online game, World of Warlords, which I think is a parody of World of Warcraft. Anyways, at WebCon, Spencer gets into a weird fandom battle with Jack Black. He's not playing himself in the episode, but I'ma just call him Jack Black. Meanwhile, at iCarly's panel, Adam surprises Carly and attends the iCarly conference. There we get to see a lot of iCarly superfans. There are guest appearances from multiple characters from different shows in the universe. There's Craig and Eric from Drake and Josh. They're apparently big iCarly fans. Gavin, the guy who works at the Premiere Movie Theater, he's also there, and Stacy from Zoey 101 is also in attendance. So this confirms that Drake and Josh, iCarly, and Zoey 101 all take place in the same universe. At the conference, fans question the gang on whether or not Freddie is dating Carly or Sam, and the fandom immediately splits into Creddy shippers and Sadie shippers. Sam wanted to have a little bit of fun, lies and says that Carly and Freddie are in love. The whole conference goes wild, and Adam leaves disappointed. A whole fan war breaks out between the Creddy and Sadie shippers, but Sam was able to calm them down and forcibly bring Adam back so they could explain. Carly explains that neither of them are dating each other and that the romantic relationships are not what iCarly is really about, but it's about pointless, stupid comedy. She says that the only guy she wants to be dating is sitting tied up in a chair. So the crowd surmises that he's the reason Carly can't be with Freddie, and they attack him. And what's worse is the iCarly gang just leaves him there to die, which is insane. Anyway, Spencer is still having his showdown with Jack Black, and Carly goes to get him because they're ready to leave. Miranda and Jack have a little bit of a scene together, and honestly, coming back from the days of School of Rock when they first first worked together, it was honestly really nice seeing them together again. I just think it was such a painful waste of Jack Black. He did have a song in the episode that I liked, but other than that, the appearance was a bust. This episode was a very clear message from the writers to the fans of iCarly that if they care about the ships in the show, that they're actually losers. There's just something that's so mean-spirited about a show that plays into ship culture and constantly teases at these characters being together and then turns around and says you're a psycho loser if you care about the relationships we constantly tease out in the show. Like, this episode is basically just one big fuck you to the fans. It's also such a boring episode. It's an hour long and it's basically just watching fans fight over who they think should be together, as if the writers are saying this is exactly how they see us. It's really weird to me that they would take this kind of stance, especially because since the episode, they continue to play into the idea of shipping these characters together. In the final episode, literally out of nowhere, they have Carly and Freddie kiss. If the ships of the show don't matter, why do you keep creating entire specials around whether or not these characters will get together? Like, it's insane. You can't create an environment to foster those kinds of ideas and then be angry when the fans participate in the thing you started. Like, you guys wrote the show. This was your idea. Why are you saying fuck me? So yeah, I don't like this episode, but it at least further establishes the extended universe. I Party with Victorious. Now let's talk about another really disappointing special. I Party with Victorious. I Party with Victorious acts as an episode of iCarly, but not an episode of Victorious, which means that most of the plot is centered around the iCarly gang and the Victorious cast acting as guest stars. Again, this is a really monumental moment in TV history because iCarly and Victorious were being aired at the same time, and both were really popular, so a crossover between the sister shows made perfect sense. Too bad it sucks. In the episode special, Carly is revealed to have been dating a new guy, Steven, for the past couple of months, and is really happy about the relationship. Apparently, Steven's parents are divorced, so he spends half of his time in Seattle and the other half in LA. Before Steven leaves to go to LA, he gives Carly an engraved charm bracelet and says he's looking forward to their 100th day kiss, which is a special kiss you have with someone on the 100th day you guys are going out, or whatever. Anyway, Steven leaves for LA, and we find out that Steven has been secretly dating Tori while in LA. At school, Steven surprises Tori with a visit, and Robbie, for some strange reason, takes a picture of Steven and Tori and had his phone set to where the pictures he takes automatically gets uploaded to the slap.com. Boy, they really pulled that one out of their ass. Back in Seattle, Carly tries to search for Steven's name and the picture that Robbie took pops up. Immediately Sam thinks this means Steven is cheating, but Carly still wants to give him the benefit of the doubt. The group references that Tori looks exactly like Shelby Marks, acknowledging the fact that Victoria Justice had already guest starred on the show.
She looks like that Shelby Marks chick you fought.
Anyways, back in LA, Andre got permission from Kenan Thompson to throw a small house party at his new house. He wants to keep it on the low and he only invites his close friends, but Rex tweeted about it and now everyone, including the iCarly gang, knows about the house party. They figure if Tori's going to be there, Steven will be there too, and they decide to drive to Los Angeles to crash a house party to see if Steven is actually cheating, but before heading to the party, they stop by an ex-girlfriend of Spencer who's a makeup artist to give them disguises so they won't be recognized. Spencer also apparently ran over her with his car, so she's doing this as a really big gesture. Everyone gets prosthetic disguises except for Spencer, which is weird because he's on iCarly a lot, so he would most definitely get recognized too. And Gibby only gets a hat and a mole. The hat Gibby is wearing though is a Drake and Josh hat. But again, we already established that Drake and Josh does take place in this universe, but the hat is the logo of the Drake and Josh TV show. Don't worry, we'll get there soon. Anyways, the gang crashes the party and starts looking for Steven, and Carly finds him giving Tori the same charm bracelet he gave her and telling her he loves her. Now that they know for a fact that Steven is a cheater, they team up with Tori and Kenan Thompson to expose him. Kenan also here makes a reference to All That, the TV show, which I think is a really cute nod.
Half the original cast of All That?
Oh, I used to love that show!
Anyways, they lure Steven to where he's supposed to have his 100th day kiss with Tori and expose him in an impromptu iCarly web show as a cheater to their millions of followers. And I don't know, this kind of felt like a bit much. And this is coming from someone who thinks cheating is the worst thing you could do to someone. But them leveraging their millions of followers against Steven felt just a bit over the line. Anyways, Steven leaves in disgrace and we get an epic mashup of the iCarly and Victoria's theme songs, Leave It All to Shine. Now, like I said, I was really disappointed in the TV special. It was supposed to be this huge culmination of all the teases to these shows taking place in a shared universe, but in execution, it kind of fell flat. For one, they didn't really have enough for all the other characters to do. There was just too much going on. I mean, Kat lost her voice, Rex is having a rap battle, and Sekos is trying to scare Beck. They just really didn't have anything to do for any of the Victorious cast besides Tori. Even Gibby spends most of the movie looking for a fake mole. I do like the fact that they acknowledged the Shelby Marks thing and made references to other shows like Drake and Josh and All That, but story-wise, plot-wise, it was pretty weak. Not a lot was happening. I was actually bored through a lot of it. And this was supposed to be the most exciting episode because we're finally seeing these two shows cross over. But the iCarly gang didn't interact with the Victorious cast besides Tori. It's only at the end when they sing together do we actually see them interacting. Like, we never get a Sam and Jade meetup, Freddie and Robbie, or Carly and Kat. It was just Tori and everybody else. This episode was also really weird because it literally aired after a cliffhanger episode where Sam kissed Freddie, and it's just never addressed in this episode. This episode was probably not supposed to air after that episode, but it did for some reason. Even though it's not my favorite special and I was pretty disappointed by it, Leave It All to Shine is a banger. I actually really like the mashup of the songs, and the way they came together at the end almost made the episode worth it for me. Killer Tuna Jump. So the Killer Tuna Jump kind of serves as a part 2 to I Party with Victorious, only it's so much worse. In this episode, Dice won a game of poker. Yep, he's still gambling, but instead of money, wins a bunch of killer tuna that he has no idea what to do with. Meanwhile, Kat and Jade are supposed to meet to work on a school project, but Kat has been trying to prevent Sam and Jade from meeting because she thinks once they meet, they'll want to kill each other. They never acknowledge the fact that they've all met before in I Party with Victorious. Even Sam and Kat meeting again in the pilot episode never acknowledge that, but whatever. Jade shows up at Kat's house unannounced and she does meet Sam, and Kat fades from all the anxiety. Once she comes to, she's shocked to find Sam and Jade getting along, and it turns out they have a lot in common with each other, such as their hatred for people. Jade and Sam begin to hang out a lot, often to the exclusion of Kat. Kat gets really jealous of the budding friendship between Jade and Sam, so she goes through Sam's phone and calls one of her friends from Seattle to hang out with to make Sam jealous, and she calls Freddie of all people. Freddie flies to LA because Kat told him Sam was hurt, but once he's there, he's used to make Sam jealous. Sam is really annoyed that Kat would call her ex to make her jealous. Jade picks up on the romantic history between Sam and Freddie and lets Sam know that if she wants to get even with Kat, then she should hang out with a guy Kat has a crush on, Robbie. Sam hangs out with Robbie and he sings I Think You're Swell, a song he originally wrote for Kat, to Sam.
And I think you're swell. You're swell.
What a fucking slut. Kat gets rightfully upset by Robbie's betrayal, and Sam and Kat get into a huge argument, culminating in Sam agreeing to do a dangerous motorcycle jump over Dice's killer tuna to help Dice make money. Kat objects to Sam doing the stunt, but Sam says she'll do it anyways because Kat obviously doesn't care about her. On the night of the stunt, however, Kat locks Sam in a closet and dresses up as her to do the stunt instead, which just makes no sense. She doesn't want Sam to do the stunt because it's super dangerous, so she's gonna do it for her. Oh, Kat. Anyways, Kat doesn't even know how to drive a motorcycle and crashes, and Freddie and Robbie get eaten alive by killer tuna. Sam and Kat then apologize to each other and reaffirm their friendship. This episode was stupid. Super psycho. So we get another crossover. Kinda. But before we can talk about this episode, we gotta go back to the beginning. iPsycho. So in this iCarly episode, the gang are invited to do a panel at WebaCon, but they get a video message from Nora, a sad teenager who's celebrating her 16th birthday and would want the iCarly crew to attend her birthday party. They agree to attend, and once there, they realize just how sad and pathetic Nora's life is. Her parents went on vacation on her birthday, none of her classmates showed up to her birthday party, and her geriatric birthday clown died of an aneurysm. Feeling really sad about Nora's patheticness, the iCarly crew does an impromptu web show at Nora's house to spread the word that they are at the party, and this drives a lot of kids from Nora's school to the party. Nora, for the first time, experiences a sliver of popularity. She finally gets to fit in with the cool kids. Daniela Monet also appears in this episode, but not as Trina. But yeah, this is what I meant when I say there's a lot of these cameos throughout the universe. Also, Nora is canonically bisexual. Nora traps the iCarly crew in her basement, not wanting to give up all the popularity and good fortune she's experienced since they came into her life. The gang is able to send off a secret message to Gibby, letting him know that they need his help, and he's able to get to them and beat Nora down and rescue them. Also, I gotta say, action sequences in this episode is more engaging and thrilling than anything we've seen in Henry Danger. Nora makes a second appearance in iCarly in the episode I Still Psycho. In this episode, Nora, who's been in prison this whole time, is having a special hearing to determine if she should be released early, and the iCarly crew are invited to voice their opinions. Carly went there with the intention to tell the judge to keep her locked up, but felt bad after seeing Nora and breaks down and tells the judge to set her free. Nora is released to her parents and they throw her a welcome home dinner and invite the iCarly crew to attend, and they accept for some reason. This pissed me off so bad. Like, I know for the sake of the story they have to say yes to get captured again, but what logical person would go back to the home of the psycho that kidnaps them? Every time I watch this episode, I'm in constant disbelief that they willingly entered that house again. Anyways, at the welcome home party, Carly asks Spencer to pick them up, and when he arrives, Nora's mom locks him in the basement and they trap the iCarly crew again. Because of course they did. You know, it's so ridiculous for Nora's parents to even agree to do this, because you trap these kids in your house to what end? Like, what's the end goal? At some point you're going to go to jail again. Anyways, Gibby tries to get help but fails, and they're able to get Freddy's mom and T-Bow's help by shortening the tracking chip in Freddy's head. They beat up the Durslets again, and Nora goes to jail. Which brings us to #SuperPsycho. Nora's in prison again, and she breaks out with the help of her pet chicken Maurice. While out, Nora tracks down Gibby, who's kind of an asshole now.
You want to snuggle?
Babe, come on, there's people here. Get off.
Nora straight up tells him she's trying to get revenge on each of the iCarly gang, and he tells Nora exactly where Sam is. So Nora goes to LA to spy on Sam to figure out the best way to hurt her and get revenge. So she decides kidnapping Dice would be the best way to do so. She keeps him in a well as a parody to the Silence of the Lambs movie. She leaves a message to Sam letting her know it was her and her plans for revenge. Sam realizes that in order to find Nora and Dice, she has to get advice from another psycho. So they head to a psych ward to speak with Neville, who's being kept there after catching a disease from his pet porcupine. Also at the psych ward, we see that Crazy Steve is also being held, although this is just a standing and not actually Jerry Trainer. Boy, I wonder what shenanigans he got into.
Look at you! The cow says boo!
Also, the warden is played by Anthony Held, who also played the doctor in The Silence of the Lambs that this movie is parodying, which was a nice touch. Anyways, Neville gives Sam and Kat a good idea of where Dice might be being kept, but before they leave, he asks Sam about Carly's mom, referencing the fact that we as the audience never got any information about that during the original run of iCarly. Anyway, Kat finds the house where Nora is keeping Dice, but Nora kidnaps her too. Sam eventually is able to make it there and beats Nora and rescues her friends. Nora goes back to prison again, but Neville breaks out of the psych ward and goes on an adventure with Gibby. #Mama Goomer. In this episode, Goomer's adoptive mother is paying a visit and Dice needs Sam and Kat's help because Goomer's mom doesn't know that he's a professional MMA fighter, but instead thinks he's a high school teacher, which is problematic for obvious reasons. So Sam and Kat have the impossible task of trying to convince Goomer's mom that he's actually a high school teacher. To do this, Kat comes up with the idea to have Goomer teach a fake class at the school so his mom can sit in and see that he's actually a teacher. So they go to Hollywood Arts to ask Psychowitz to use his classroom, and we get a shot of the Victorious cast with their back turns. Obviously just stand-ins, we hear a little bit of Rex, but again establishing the idea that they're all in the same universe. Eventually their plan implodes and Goomer admits to his mom that he's an MMA fighter. She disapproves of his profession and threatens to take him home. On their way back in the alleyway, Goomer's mom gets attacked by muggers and Goomer is able to beat them up and protect her. So she agrees to let him stay and continue to be an MMA fighter. So some interesting things we learn in this episode is that Goomer's adoptive mom doesn't really love him. Like, he wasn't even her first choice when she was adopting a child.
When I adopted you, I should have kept the receipt.
Also, Goomer's full name is Goomer. His first name is Goo, and his last name is Mer. I don't know, man. If I have to know all of this information, you guys are gonna have to learn them too. #Mad About a Shoe. Man, going into this, I didn't realize how many crossovers happened in Sam and Kat. Would have thought that this show would have been the main catalyst for our discussions. Anyways, in this episode, Kat finds a red shoe in a bush and becomes obsessed with finding the other missing pair. Sam isn't interested in the shoe at all, but wants Kat to make her grandmother's delicious meatballs so they can celebrate the throbbing moon. That's right. The throbbing moon. I really do wonder what goes through the writer's head when they sit down to write an episode. Anyways, Kat refuses to make any meatballs until she finds the missing shoe. So, with the help of Dice, they are able to find out where the shoe came from. Stacy Dilson from Zoey 101 was riding her bike when she hit a pipe and one of her red shoes came flying off. So Sam and Kat go to the hospital where she's being treated to steal the other pair. Sam dresses up as a nurse and everything, and eventually Stacy does remember what happened. She mentions graduating from PCA and that she's now attending college. Still, that doesn't stop Kat from stealing the shoe. Later that night, Kat does make the meatballs and they all enjoy the throbbing moon together. #the bloopers. So a recurring trend in all of these Dan-Schneider shows is the infamous blooper episode. In this episode, the cast acknowledge that Sam and Kat is a TV show and act as a fictionalized version of themselves, even making reference to Ariana Grande's budding music career.
Huge music career going for you. Double platinum.
Thank you.
It's so weird watching this episode knowing what we know now about the behind the scenes of making the show. Like, even having that line in the show and having Jeanette say it is crazy. Anyways, in this blooper episode, they watch bloopers from when they mess up. The important thing here is that Michael Eric Reed, who plays St. Jane from Victorious, makes a cameo here, where they mention the fact that he was not a main character and so was often left out of things. Jerry Train is also seen in one of the bloopers because he was visiting the set that day of filming. I liked the other blooper episodes from the other shows, but the Sam and Cat bloopers aren't fun. Like, they're not fun to watch, and it's probably because you can tell the cast aren't exactly having fun in them. Like, when Ariana or Jeanette mess up a line, you're not like, oh, haha, that's so funny. It looks like making that show is so fun and goofy. It actually doesn't look like a fun time at all. And you can tell that the production were actually struggling to find enough fun footage to show us, because after a while, the bloopers just became compilations of the cast members yawning because of how tired they were on set, probably because they were working long hours, or cast members dancing around in between takes when they're bored. Like, at one point, they stopped showing us bloopers from Sam and Cat and showed us bloopers from Drake and Josh. They were really scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to show us fun times the cast were having on set. And I think that's really sad. And it really dawned on me that they were struggling so much to find enough good usable footage for this episode that the bloopers made up such a small portion of the episode itself. There's this whole ongoing sequence of the cast being at a restaurant waiting for food, but the way they're constantly ignoring them and random patrons of the restaurant walking up to them, asking them about the show in a way that perfectly segues to maybe a minute of blooper footage. And you know, the other blooper episodes, they do have those in-between blooper bits, like Miranda pretending to be the boss and threatening to fire Jerry, or Christopher Kane interviewing the cast, but at least those segments are entertaining and we still get to see a lot of bloopers. So it's really sad watching this episode because you can tell that they really couldn't find a lot of moments where the cast were genuinely enjoying themselves in between takes. And when you compare that with the other blooper episodes, it just becomes so much more glaringly obvious that there were problems on the set of Sam and Cat. Hashtag first class problems. In this episode, Sam and Cat are babysitting a bunch of spoiled rich kids. They're so insufferable that their own parents refuse to travel with them on their vacation to the Bahamas. So instead, they want Sam and Cat to take them where they'll get the opportunity to fly first class. Cat jumps on the opportunity because it's been a lifelong dream of hers to fly first class. So Sam and Cat escort the kids to the airport. While there, they run into Coco, who is flying to her ex-husband's wedding because her ex-husband Carl is marrying her mom. Carl was also her boyfriend back in Zoey 101, and now he's marrying her mom. Yeah, good to see they still haven't given her a break. She mentions that she still works at PCA and still has an unhealthy obsession with ravioli. Anyways, the long-running joke in this episode is that despite Sam and Cat having first-class tickets, the airline continuously boarded other passengers before them. And you know, when watching this episode, this joke felt so familiar to me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had seen this somewhere before. And I have. This is the same plot of a Key and Peele sketch. In the sketch, a guy's trying to board a plane but has to wait as more and more ridiculous boarding groups get preferential boarding. There's even a joke that was taken verbatim from this sketch.
Anyone in the military?
What? This is ridiculous.
Why should they get to board first?
Just because they were in the military. Thank you for your service.
You're all heroes.
Okay, we would like to continue boarding with uniformed military personnel.
What? Why gets... This is... Thank you for your service. Thank you so much for your service. God bless you.
Now, the Key and Peele sketch aired on October 9, 2013, and this Sam and Cat episode aired April 26, 2014. So not a lot of time in between. I think it's pretty unlikely the writers directly copied the Key and Peele sketch, but it is one hell of a coincidence that they are so similar. Anyways, they don't get to board at all because of Goomer and Dice. This episode was boring. Now we can finally move on to Henry Danger. So in the episode Life and Dangerous, Henry and Ray are in the man cave when they receive a message from Frankini, a popular internet star, inviting them to a party he's hosting that weekend. Henry says he won't be able to go because he has to babysit his younger sister, Piper, but Charlotte volunteers to do it for him. So Kid Danger and Captain Man show up to Frankini's place, except he says that the party isn't until next week. Frankini's assistant Goomer comes in with Frankini bottoms. There are these new type of underwear he's been waiting for male models to showcase. Kid Danger and Captain Man jump at the opportunity to model underwear for him. Now, Frankini as a character is very interesting because in Victorious, a long-running gag in the show is how Kat's brother is a psychopathic maniac that abuses her. Kat's brother is a long-running mystery in the show because Kat will randomly go off on weird things that her brother has done, but we've never seen him in the show, until now, because Franchini is canonically Kat's brother. In this episode, Gomer makes reference to the fact that he used to work for Franchini's sister. It's also made more apparent that Franchini is Kat's brother because Frankie Grande, who plays Franchini, is Ariana Grande's real-life older brother. It also makes perfect sense that Kat's brother would be this guy because the things she said he does actually lines up with how Franchini is portrayed.
My brother got shot by a clown.
Why?
Because my brother kept poking him and saying, "What you gonna do about it, clown? Huh?"
Anyways, Captain Man and Kid Danger put on the underwear, but it's revealed that the underwear is actually a mind-controlling device and that Franchini is going to be live-streaming Captain Man and Kid Danger until he breaks the record for most viewed stream with 10 million viewers. If he's able to do so, he'll have Captain Man and Kid Danger remove their masks, revealing their true identities. Charlotte and Pepper watch the livestream and realize there must be something wrong as Captain Man and Kid Danger would never reveal their identities. So Piper decides to start a competing stream where if she breaks the record, she'll be popping a fake prosthetic pimple on Jasper's neck, diverting attention away from Franchini's livestream. Now for shits and giggles, I did look up what the actual record is for the most concurrent viewers in a livestream, and it's actually a record that was very recently set by Chandrayaan3. I'm probably saying that wrong. But that was a livestream of India's moon landing on August 23rd. I couldn't get an accurate report on the number by the time of this video, but it seems to be between 6 to 8 million concurrent viewers. Anyways, Franchini has Captain Man and Kid Danger do a bunch of weird things to get enough viewers to break the record, and he does. But right before he's able to take off their masks, Schwaj cuts the power off to the entire city, shutting down the machine, giving Captain Man and Kid Danger enough time to capture Franchini, and they pay him back in the most disgusting way possible. Franchini would become a recurring Captain Man villain from then on, and he and Gomer would continue to appear in episodes and even the spin-off series Danger Force. Danger Games. There's one last major crossover that we have to talk about, and that's Danger Games. The crossover between Henry Danger and Game Shakers, and it's just so painfully boring. Literally nothing happens in this episode, nothing at all. It's a stupid episode that could only happen if everyone in the show acts irresponsibly. The Game Shakers wants to take a vacation to relax and they landed on going to Swellview because apparently Swellview is known for being a town where nothing happened and it's peaceful and calm. But no, it's not. Swellview is the only city in this universe where low-stake catastrophic things happens all the time. And it's not like the existence of superheroes and supervillains are hidden from the public. Everybody knows about Captain Man and Kid Danger. There are literal news stations that report on their exploits all the time. So how on earth would Swellview have this reputation of being a peaceful city? Did you guys not watch the show you wrote? Then Captain Man and Kid Danger straight up killed one of their villains. Well, he didn't die, but they thought that he did. And they were like fine with killing him, which is insane. And again, they go on a news station to talk about just how lame this villain is, Dr. Maniac, and how he isn't really a threat to anyone, which to be perfectly honest would be true of 99% of the bad guys they fight. Anyways, Dr. Maniac is offended, so he makes it his mission to do something truly evil to earn the respect of the public as a threatening villain. And you know what he came up with? Disrupting Double G's fundraiser concert. I'm not kidding. His super evil plan is to create a device that would stop Double G from performing at a fundraiser. I'd just like to point out that before this, his plan was to flood the entire city of Swellview, and now he's gonna stop a fundraiser. Anyways, in the meantime, Captain Man and Kid Danger are obsessed with this video game app, and I'd just like to point out something that kind of bothers me about the green screen in this show, and this is 100% just nitpicking. But whenever people are using a Pear product, you can tell that the actors are just directed to tap anywhere on the screen to make things happen, and they'll put the graphics in post. But when they're watching a video or swiping, it's really simple gestures, so it never really feels out of place or distracting. But in Game Shakers, because they're making gaming apps, the actors have to be constantly tapping on the screens, and it never really lines up with what we're seeing. So the point where it actually does become distracting because they're basically just randomly hitting the screen. Can you tell I hate this show? So the Game Shakers land in Swellview and they're staying at the Hart household because Piper put their home on Airbnb. Okay, I guess I gotta explain this. So Piper got an email from a prince to send him money to help him and that if she does, he'll send her back $1 million. So she asks her dad for the money, but obviously he thinks this is a scam and tells her to come up with the money herself. So in order to make the money to send to the prince, she puts her parents' house on Airbnb without their permission and rented out their rooms. And their parents are just fine with this. Listen, I've been watching the Dan-Schneider shows for months now, but this has to be the craziest thing I've ever seen. They allow these strange kids to stay in their home with Henry and Piper with no adult supervision, while they stay at the hotel. God, I hate this show. But you know what? I will give the show props because it turns out at the end that the prince was real and that it actually wasn't a scam. I kinda like that. Anyways, Babe and Kenzie immediately have a crush on Henry once they see him, and while staying in his room, they discover his gum and realize he's Kid Danger. Dr. Maniac tries to sabotage Double G's charity event, so the Game Shakers and Team Danger team up to save Double G, and we get the most frustrating sequence I've ever had to sit through. Everything slows down and everybody's moving at the most glacial pace you can think of. There's no urgency, no sense of importance. Captain Man and Kid Danger are just so incompetent, which honestly, they always are, but it's like, he's right beside you, you're already in disguise. You don't need to leave the stage and change into your costumes. And two, instead of going directly to Dr. Maniac, they spend the entire time fighting the goons, and the weapon gets tossed around a couple of times. Babe has the opportunity to use it on Maniac, and she takes forever. Like, I didn't edit this footage. This is really how it went. This is how slow she's moving. Like, shoot the weapon! Anyways, Maniac gets captured and that's the end of the episode. I'm so over this. Tiny Pickles. Okay, now we only have one last episode to talk about, and it's Tiny Pickles from Game Shakers. In this episode, the Game Shakers have made a new gaming app, but Double G wants to make some serious changes to the app based on a dream he has. The Game Shakers get booked on the Helen Show to promote the app, and Double G gives his description of what the app would be like rather than what Babe and Kenzie actually made. So Babe and Kenzie at the very last minute have to incorporate Double G's idea into their app when they debut it on the Helen Show, and they have to steal Matt Bennett's spot on the Helen Show to do so. Also, Rex makes a cameo appearance at the end. So that's it. Those are all the major appearances by characters in the multiple shows in the universe. We know that iCarly, Drake and Josh, and Zoey 101 are connected because Eric and Craig from Drake and Josh and Stacey Dilson from Zoey 101 both make an appearance in iCarly. iCarly is also very clearly in the same universe as Victorious because they had their crossover special I Party with Victorious. But also, the very existence of Sam and Cat the TV show further reinforces the idea that they share a universe. We know that Sam and Cat exist in the same universe as Henry Danger because Goomer appears in that show and Frankini is revealed to be Cat's brother. And finally, Henry Danger and Game Shakers exist in the same universe because they have multiple crossover episodes, including the series finale where Babe has to choose between a bunch of guys that she likes but is having trouble doing so, and one of them is Henry. Game Shaker actually ends on a cliffhanger. They never got a proper send-off, similar to Victorious and Sam and Cat. But honestly, did any of you guys even watch Game Shakers? So anyways, based on all of that, you'd think that we'd be able to definitively say that all of these Dan-Schneider shows takes place in the same universe. Except that we can't because there are so many contradictions to this idea throughout the universe. So let's look at some of them. Contradictions. So the main issue of the contradiction that these shows are taking place in a shared universe really hinges on what I like to call the series advancement paradox. Essentially, what I've noticed happening in this universe is that once a new series is added to the universe, the already existing sitcoms are treated as a show within the new series. For example, once Zoey 101 began, Drake and Josh was immediately treated as a sitcom that the characters of Zoey 101 could watch. And once iCarly started airing, both Drake and Josh and Zoey 101 are treated as sitcoms that those characters could watch. The only exception really is iCarly, Victorious, and by extension, Sam and Cat, because of how closely both of those shows were written and filmed within each other. They really do act as sister shows, and as such cannot be treated as sitcoms within their universe. But once we get past Sam and Cat, Henry Danger and Game Shakers treat the iCarly Victorious sister universe as a sitcom. So in Zoey 101, in the episode Webcam, the girls are watching TV, and if you listen closely, you can hear that they're watching an episode of Drake and Josh.
This is the funniest show ever.
The best. Nicole.
And in the same season, in the episode Spring Fling, Drake Bell makes a guest appearance where he plays a concert for the kids at PCA, but not as Drake Parker from Drake and Josh, but as the actor-musician Drake Bell. So in the universe of Zoey 101, Drake and Josh is a TV show that Drake Bell stars in, despite the fact that Zoey 101 and Drake Josh were airing around the same time. Also in iCarly, Drake and Josh is also treated as a TV show. In the episode I Get Pranky, Carly and Spencer can be seen multiple times watching episodes of Drake and Josh.
And by the way, you didn't kill Hervé. The camera flash just stunned him.
How come that little girl's so good at pranks?
In another episode, Ito Fat Cakes, yup, that's an actual episode name, Carly can again be seen watching an episode of Drake and Josh. So Drake and Josh is a TV show despite the fact that Craig, Eric, and Gavin have made appearances on the show. In the Victorious in the episode Who Did to Trina, the cast talked at length about an episode of Drake and Josh and how it was a good TV show, despite the fact that Helen has appeared in an episode of Victorious and made several references to her life in Drake and Josh. The justification that fans have come up with is that Drake and Josh is a reality TV show, so all of those things did happen, but other people could watch it as a show. And that theory could kind of fly, especially because Drake and Josh have a running gag where at the beginning of every episode, both Drake and Josh speak directly into the camera about a specific topic that episode would revolve around, similarly to how they do confessionals in reality shows. The only problem is it doesn't make sense that Drake and Josh should be a reality show, because one, in Zoey 101 they refer to Drake as Drake Bell, not Drake Parker, and two, whenever anyone talks about Drake and Josh, they always talk about it as a sitcom, as actors playing a role.
Drake and Josh. That show was classic.
So no, it's not a reality show. Also, in Sam and Cat, both Drake and Josh and Zoey 101 appear as a TV show, despite the fact that Coco Wexler appeared in an episode and made direct references to PCA. But probably the most egregious effort to undermine the idea of a shared universe happens in Game Shakers. In Tiny Pickles, Helen again makes a reappearance, this time as the host of her own talk show, but Matt Bennett also makes an appearance, not as Robbie Shapiro, but as himself. So in this episode alone, they both support and contradict the idea of a shared universe. And another episode, Game Shippers, the Game Shakers get hooked on an iCarly marathon on TNet. They literally sit around all day watching reruns of iCarly. I mean, the disrespect. The whole episode revolves around the Game Shakers trying to figure out whether Freddy actually liked Carly or if he liked Sam. And you know, this really pissed me off because in the I Start a Fan War episode, the whole thesis statement of that episode was if you care whether or not Freddy would date Carly or Sam, you're a loser. Like, they made fun of us for being invested in the ships, and here they are years later bringing it up again. Like, what the hell? The Game Shakers are so desperate for an answer, they break into Nathan Chris's hotel room to interrogate him for themselves. They never did get an answer, and honestly, at this point, who cares? Now, why are there so many contradictions? Why is it that in one episode, it seems like there is ample evidence to support that there is a shared universe, and then in another, that no longer seems to be the case? Well, even considering the fact that these shows have had a change of writers over the many years, Dan-Schneider does write most of the episodes of these shows, especially the major crossovers, and a lot of them he's credited as the sole writer, and a lot of the creative decisions have to be approved by him. But I think what has happened is that in the very early days of the universe, there was always some effort to just shout out some of the other productions they've worked on, whether that be subtly by having props or characters make a reference to those old productions, or by actually having old characters or actors appear in the new shows. This happens a lot, especially in major special episodes. But I don't think there was any real larger planning or intention of having all of these shows take place in the same universe. Like, this isn't phase 3 of the MCU. I don't think the writers sat down and mapped out how all of these shows can be interconnected. They're just writing episodes of a TV show, and sometimes they might want to reference some of their old works, but there's not a lot of thought put into what the larger ramifications or implications are by including those references. No real thought to how they might impact the larger universe, and so as time went on, I think it just became more about being able to be self-congratulatory by referencing how you made the funniest show of all time.
I'm just an actor, okay? I am not one of the geniuses who wrote iCarly.
Rather than caring about how if you do that, how does that perfectly fit into the larger universe you've stumbled yourself into creating? Because honestly, I don't think when they created Drake and Josh, they knew that it would grow into this. So what does that mean for us? How do we as fans navigate this mess? Well, some fans have created their own headcanons to make sense of what we have, like the Drake and Josh is a reality show theory. But for me, I kind of just accept it for what it is. As the universe grows and more shows are added, things in the older shows are going to be contradicted and it's not going to make a lot of sense. But is it really too much to ask that you don't contradict yourself in the same episode? Honestly, I also think that in addition to not caring that much, the writers do want to leave the idea open-ended for us to draw our own conclusions. So that's what I'm going to do. So the truth is, this is just a mess of a universe and it was intended to be so. Okay, so we've spoken at length about a lot of Dan-Schneider productions, and it feels irresponsible to end this video without at least acknowledging the alleged misconduct that took place on these shows. Dan-Schneider was let go by Nickelodeon in 2018, and he has had no direct involvement with their programming since. Since as early as 2014, multiple allegations have been coming out about misconduct, over-sexualization of his young stars, and hostile work environments. Now, I started watching Dan-Schneider shows since I was really young, Honestly, maybe even a little too young. Like, I wasn't even a tween. So a lot of the inappropriate stuff that would show up in his earlier works never really stood out to me. There's one instance of a scene in Zoey 101 where Zoey, played by a very underage Jamie Lynn, has goo squirted all over her face. Now, at the time, I was so young that it never really occurred to me how else that scene could be interpreted, and I'm not going to show that scene here because honestly, it might very well be a crime. Now, as an adult, it is crazy to me that grown people took out a camera, filmed that scene, showed it to the network, and the network was like, yeah, that's okay to show the kids. Just unbelievable. And in rewatching all of these shows, there are so many instances of stuff like that. The feet thing, which again, as a kid, I would never realize how else that could be interpreted, but it is so pervasive all across his shows. The way in which people of color are depicted, just these really derogatory stereotypes, and the over-sexualization of his young stars. There are allegations that he would request to take pictures of these underage girls in bikinis to pick out the ones that he liked the best. And you know, it reminds me of the first instance where I was watching a Dan-Schneider show, and I felt uncomfortable. It was an episode of Victorious, and it was the episode where they got trapped in an RV on the beach, and Kat had already left the RV and was hanging out with a bunch of guys. And there's a scene where she's wearing a bathing suit because again, they're at the beach, and the guys have a bunch of water guns and they're going around in a circle squirting water all over Kat. And I kid you not, I was like 9 years old when that episode aired, and I remember thinking, this doesn't feel appropriate for kids. Like, there's something weird going on here. And there was one other instance, ironically in Victorious again, where I was like, yeah, they might need to do some investigating at Nickelodeon because something is not right. I'm not even sure how this episode aired on TV. So in the episode, the Victorious gang made a cupcake float for a parade, and the float broke down in a bad neighborhood and got a flat tire. So Tori leaves the float to go get help and change the tire. And so she walks up to a group of these very aggressive looking men, and she asks them if they could help her change the tire. And they kind of look around at each other and look at the pretty teenage girl by herself in a dark alley and kind of laughingly go, yeah, we can help you change a tire.
We'll change it real good.
And then the scene transitions to them actually helping her change the tire. And I just want you to think for a second what the punchline was, what the purpose and joke of that scene is. It is crazy to me that the writers would put in a scene where the implication is that we are about to witness the main character be violently. Like, I can't believe the network even allowed that scene. And it's not even funny. Like, the punchline of the joke was that we thought that Tori was in grave danger where something really bad was going to happen to her. But ha ha ha, actually they were really nice and they're helping her. I have no words. So I say all of this to say that while some of our favorite shows are a part of this universe, we really do have to acknowledge that there was a lot of harm happening on these sets. It is just really terrible because I'll hear other child stars from other shows talk about how it was the best time of their lives working on those shows. And when it comes to the Dan-Schneider shows, so many people have had terrible experiences, and allegedly it's because of the creator. Alexa Nicola speaks a lot about her experience being bullied and abused on the set of Zoey 101. Jeanette McCurdy also saying how bad it was on the set of Sam and Cat, and that there were many scenes of iCarly she was very uncomfortable filming. Ivan Joget even saying that he doesn't even remember filming a lot of Victorious because he was drunk a lot on set. And Jeanette substantiated that in her book, saying that the Victorious cast were often encouraged to drink on set despite being underage. So while we do like these shows, we also have to grapple with the fact that the production of these series did cause real harm. So working on this video was a lot of fun. I really do feel like it was the culmination of my entire childhood because I spent so much of my time watching these shows. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And you know, you might as well subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Be sure to check out some of my other videos. You can follow me on Twitter to connect, and I'll see you guys in the next one.